So what we're saying is, it's great to have knowledge, but we want to move beyond that. We want our kids to be wise. And what is that? What does that take? So whether you're starting a school here or any enterprise that you're going in, you really need to focus on what we call the vision. What is it you as a community are dreaming of? What is your shared purpose? By the way, I just want to tell you that after I end my piece, you will all have an opportunity to participate. And so don't fall asleep. Or if you fall asleep, do make sure you wake up at the end of my talk so you can all participate. So we're going to try to figure out what is that shared purpose that you have. And the reason is that most of the focus in the world today, whether it's education or any other enterprise, is the method. How do we get something done? How do we do it? How do we do it? Or you focus on the outcomes. I want my kid to be really successful, and you focus on get me a great test result. But what we're saying is that if you are sticking with the shared purpose, the vision, then the methods will kind of take care of themselves. And if you select the methods that coincide with your vision, then the outcomes will take care of themselves. So what I'm saying is that teaching to the test is a way you have happening in schools. That's the worst way for a kid to perform well in school. If you say that I want my kid to be a well-rounded citizen who's going to be happy in school, you're more likely that the kid is going to do really well on the exams. So what I'm saying is, it seems counterintuitive, but all the research points to the fact that kids who are engaged and happy are much more likely to be successful than those who are force-fed a curriculum and then expected to do well in the exams. So here's this deal. There's this thing what we call above the line, which is all the stuff that speaks to the head. And there's the stuff that below the line that speaks to the heart. Most of the stuff that's below the line isn't really even written down. It's the unwritten rules in which our world operates. So the above the line stuff is all the good things we say. I mean, you can go to almost any school system anywhere in the country and you'll see the best language. We say, we want all our children to succeed. Nobody's going to say we want our children to fail, right? And yet, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, as an example, 90% of the students actually failed, did not make it out of high school. In fact, 3 years ago, more kids went to jail from the Harrisburg school system than graduated. I mean, just to give you a sense. But if you were to look at the writing on the wall, you'll see the same mission statement there that you'll probably see in Biscayne, because everybody's going to say, I want my kids to be successful, I want them to be prosperous, I don't want them to be taking drugs, I don't want them to be in gangs. All of that, we have all the rhetoric. We've got all those words down. Our curriculums will say all of those things. And that's all above the line stuff. The problem is we're not connecting that to human beings and who we are as people. And that's what's missing. So what we're saying is that there has to be a way to bring all that great above the line rhetoric below the line so that it actually works in the real world. So here's an example. Above the line, you'll go to a school system and they say all children will succeed, learning will be personalized. Below the line, you walk into a classroom. Actually, this is similar to a classroom in Detroit that I recently visited. That was a $145 million school where you had $40 chairs on which the kids were sitting for 6 hours a day. So the question is, what is the message you're actually sending to the children if you're saying to them that I want you to sit on the same chair that McDonald's uses so that you'll get up and leave in half an hour? And here you're forcing the kids to sit for 6 hours a day. So what I'm saying is that there's a huge gap between our actions and our words. You know, and the kids will see through that. You know, so what we're saying is, what are your priorities as a community if you feel that it is okay for a child to sit on a cheap $30 plastic chair for 6 hours a day? Okay, so that's a kind of question that we have to really ask ourselves, because that's what really counts. So getting back to the big question then of what is education, it's not this mastery of subject matter, because subject matter changes. This is the problem we have. No matter what you learn, you know it's going to change tomorrow. But if oneself, so that's something that's very hard for people to grasp, that education's purpose is not to become an expert at something, but to become an expert at yourself and know what you're good at and to realize that full potential. And there's this other thing. There's a myth that somehow when kids graduate from school, they're going to put everything together. It's like teaching a kid to learn to drive the car by teaching them the brakes one day, the steering wheel the next day, and the accelerator the third day, and saying, okay, go drive the car. It's just not going to work. And that's kind of what we do. We break up school into meaningless subjects like maths and science and social studies and history and all of that. And somehow when they grow out of school, there is no social studies, there is no math. It all happens in the context of the real world. And this is an actual fact that 50% of American college graduates weren't able to make change from $3 after buying a can of Coke and a $1.65 sandwich. Now this is after what, 12 years of school and 4 years of college. These are graduates. So what we're saying is that there's something happening, that there is no connection between the learning that's happening in school and the learning that actually has to happen in the real world in which our kids have to live. So here are some of the above line stuff, theories, concepts, abstraction, answers, ideology, efficiency. These are the kinds of things that makes a tremendous amount of sense in the above the line thing. And by the way, the German education system during the time of the Holocaust, you could actually say all of that stuff above, it was noted as considered to be the best education system in the world. And yet the stuff below the line, values, human beings, awareness, questions, conscience, this kind of stuff wasn't there. And that's what led to the bankruptcy of the human mind. So what we're saying is that you can't teach the above the line stuff without somehow connecting it to all that below the line stuff. So let's get to what is 21st century education. If you look at 20th century, learning was wonderful. I mean, the guy who did well on Jeopardy was considered our ideal of the most learned guy because he knew everything, right? But now if I had a BlackBerry and I was standing next to him, I'd probably do better than him, right? But the thing is, that what we thought about as being great, learned, educated people were really just people who knew stuff. There were things that they had learned, and they could then spit out that learning, right? But we're saying in the 21st century, it's not enough to do that. You have to be able to understand what you learn, and that's a different level. Now, when you want to do well on a test, you can either memorize something and depend on your faulty memory during the time of the test, or you can understand the concepts behind something and then not have to depend on your memory and do even better on the test. So even if you're purely a test-taking type person and that's all you're worried about, even then, understanding concepts is a much better way of learning than just learning it. In other words, memorizing it or just learning it at a very superficial level. But the 21st century goes beyond that. What we're saying is kids need to be able to apply that understood knowledge in context other than which it was learned. Because for sure, when that kid grows up, they're going to be working in a different context. So what's the point of learning, and what's the point of understanding if you can't apply it when the world changes around you, right? But then that's not enough, because a kid in China can apply the learning that they have learned. How is a kid in America who's going to compete with a kid in China or a kid in India or a kid in Malaysia going to survive? Because those kids are going to work for a tenth of the wage, right? So what we're saying is, well, you need to then create something. You need to create something that has value, that somebody else actually needs. And that brings us to the idea of contributing. So what we're saying is that it is not just enough to be a good learner. We need to be able to understand it. We need to be able to apply it. We need to then use that to create something original, and then use that original something to contribute something positive to society. And that's what 21st century learning is all about. It's a much more complicated enterprise than what was 20th century. And you saw the video before. You saw what the practice of that might begin to look like. It looks very different than what we imagine a traditional school to look like.